The throne room fell silent. Every eye turned toward the young guard standing at the door. His hand trembled on the hilt of his sword, but his jaw was set firm. He had just done something unthinkable. He had spoken out of turn. He had interrupted the queen herself. Camilla sat frozen on her gilded chair, her pale fingers gripping the armrests. The parchment she had been readying the new tax decree slipped from her lap and drifted to the marble floor. Around her, the advisors and lords exchanged shocked glances. No one moved. No one breathed. The guard's name was Thomas. He was 23 years old, the son of a baker, and he had served in the royal guard for only 2 years. He was not supposed to speak unless spoken to. He was not supposed to question. He was certainly not supposed to challenge the queen in front of the entire court, but he had. "Your Majesty," Thomas said again, his voice steadier now. "With respect, the people cannot bear this burden." A ripple of whispers spread through the hall. Lord Ashford, the Queen's chief advisor, stepped forward, his face red with fury. "Silence! How dare you address Her Majesty in such a—" Camilla raised one hand. The room went quiet again. She studied Thomas with cold, unblinking eyes. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, slowly, she stood. "You forget your place, guardsman," she said softly. Her voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. "You are here to protect, not to advise." Thomas swallowed hard. His heart pounded so loud he was sure everyone could hear it. But he did not look away. He thought of his father's bakery, now shuttered because they could not pay last season's taxes. He thought of his sister, 10 years old, who had cried herself to sleep the night before because there was no bread for supper. He thought of the families in the village who had started burning their furniture, just to stay warm. And if you're watching this, stay with us. This story gets darker before it finds light. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. "I know my place, Your Majesty," Thomas said quietly, "but I also know the people. I walk among them. I see their faces. And this new tax, it will destroy them." The silence that followed was suffocating. Camilla's expression did not change, but something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, perhaps. Or anger. It was hard to tell. "The treasury is depleted," she said finally. "The wars in the north have drained our coffers. The roads need repair. The army needs supplies. Someone must pay." "They are already paying," Thomas replied. His voice cracked, but he pushed forward. "They pay with their lives. With their children's hunger. My own family," he stopped, forcing himself to breathe. "Your Majesty, if you take any more, there will be nothing left." Lord Ashford stepped forward again, his hand moving toward his sword. "This insolence cannot leave him," Camilla said sharply. She descended the steps of the throne, her silk gown whispering against the stone. She moved closer to Thomas, close enough that he could see the fine lines around her eyes, the weight she carried in her shoulders. "Tell me, guardsman," she said, her voice low. "What would you have me do?" Thomas felt the weight of every gaze in the room. This was his moment. He could either speak the truth and risk everything, or he could bow his head and let his people suffer in silence. He chose truth. "Asterisk, reduce the tax," Thomas said. His voice was quiet but steady. "Take half of what is written in that decree. Let the people keep enough to survive the winter. They will pay what they can, but they need time. They need mercy." The word hung in the air like a challenge. Mercy. It was not a word often spoken in the throne room. Camilla's eyes narrowed. For a moment, Thomas thought she might strike him. Instead, she turned and walked back toward the throne, her footsteps echoing in the vast hall. She did not sit. She stood with her back to him, staring at the stained glass windows that depicted kings and queens of old. "Mercy," she repeated, as if tasting the word. "My advisors tell me mercy is weakness, that a ruler who yields to the demands of one voice will soon be drowned by 1,000. "Your Majesty," Lord Ashford interjected, his tone urgent, "this man speaks treason. He undermines your authority. If word spreads that a common guardsman swayed your judgment, then what?" Camilla spun around, her voice sharp as a blade. "Then they will see me as human? As someone who listens." Ashford's mouth opened, then closed. He looked at the other advisors for support, but they were silent, their faces carefully blank. Thomas felt a flicker of hope. It was small, fragile, but it was there. Camilla's gaze returned to him. You say you know the people. You say you walk among them. But you do not sit where I sit. You do not carry the weight of a kingdom on your shoulders. Every decision I make, someone suffers. If I lower the taxes, the soldiers go unpaid. If the soldiers go unpaid, they desert. If they desert, our enemies invade. Tell me, guardsmen, where does mercy end and ruin begin? Thomas clenched his fists. He had no answer for that. He was not a politician or a strategist. He was just a man who had seen too much suffering. I do not know, Your Majesty, he admitted, but I know that a kingdom is not its walls or its gold. It is its people. And if the people die, there is no kingdom left to protect. The room fell silent again. Camilla looked at him for a long time, and Thomas could not read her expression. Was it anger? Respect? Exhaustion? Finally, she spoke. You are either very brave or very foolish. Perhaps both, Thomas said quietly. A ghost of a smile touched her lips, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. She picked up the parchment from the floor, smoothing it with her hands. This decree was not my idea, she said, almost to herself. It was the council's. They calculated the numbers, weighed the costs. They told me it was necessary. She looked at the advisors, and several of them shifted uncomfortably. But I signed it, she continued. I put my seal on it. That makes it mine. Waited. He could feel the tension in the room, thick and oppressive. Everyone was waiting to see what she would do. Camilla turned to Lord Ashford. Summon the council. Tonight, we will revisit the tax decree. Ashford's face went pale. Your Majesty, if we show weakness now? I said summon them, Camilla repeated, her voice cold. Or would you prefer I make this decision without you? Ashford bowed stiffly and stepped back. The other advisors murmured among themselves, but no one dared speak openly. Camilla looked back at Thomas. You will attend the council meeting. Thomas blinked. Your Majesty, you started this, she said. You will see it through. If you truly speak for the people, then speak. Convince the council as you have. Given me pause. It was not an agreement. It was not a promise, but it was a chance. Thomas bowed deeply. Thank you, Your Majesty. Camilla waved a hand dismissively. Do not thank me yet. If you fail, the tax stands. And you will face consequences for this disruption. Thomas straightened. He understood. He had gambled everything on this moment. And the game was not over. As the court began to disperse, Thomas felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned to see Captain Graves, the head of the Royal Guard, his expression unreadable. You have made powerful enemies today, Graves said quietly. Pray you have made one powerful friend. The council chamber was smaller than the throne room, but no less intimidating. A long oak table stretched down the center, surrounded by high-backed chairs. Candles flickered in iron sconces on the walls. Casting dancing shadows across the faces of the men and women gathered there, Thomas stood at the far end of the table. Still in his guard uniform, feeling entirely out of place, the council members watched him with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. These were not soldiers or common folk. These were nobles, landowners, treasury officials, people who measured the kingdom in numbers and strategies. Not in hungry children and shuttered shops, Camilla sat at the head of the table, her expression neutral. Lord Ashford sat to her right, his arms crossed, his jaw tight. To her left sat Lady Margrave, the kingdom's treasurer, a woman with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. Let us begin, Camilla said. Her voice cut through the murmurs. Guardsman Thomas has raised concerns about the new tax decree. He believes it will cause undue suffering among the common people. I have agreed to hear him out. Speak, Thomas. All eyes turned to him. Thomas felt his throat go dry. He was not used to speaking in front of powerful people. He was used to standing in the background, silent and unseen. But he thought of his father, his sister, the families in the village. The decree demands 20% of all household income, Thomas began. His voice was rough, but he forced himself to continue. For many families, that is the difference between survival and starvation. My father is a baker. Last season, he paid 15%. It left us with barely enough to buy flour and firewood. This new tax, it will take everything. Lady Margrave leaned forward, her fingers steepled. The Treasury requires funds. The Northern Wars have cost us dearly. Without adequate resources, we cannot maintain order or security. Surely you understand that? I do, Thomas said. But if the people cannot eat, cannot heat their homes, cannot survive, what are we securing? A kingdom of ghosts. A few council members shifted uncomfortably. Others frowned. Lord Ashford spoke, his tone icy. The common folk have always complained about taxes. They complain when we ask for 10%. They complain when we ask for 5%. If we listen to every grievance, we will bankrupt the crown. This is not about listening to every grievance, Thomas replied, his voice rising. This is about survival. I walk the streets every day. I see the beggars. I see the children with hollow eyes. I see families burning their furniture because they have no wood left. And now you want to take even more? We want to preserve the kingdom, Ashford snapped. You speak of suffering, but you do not speak of invasion. You do not speak of what happens when our borders are left undefended because we have no gold to pay the soldiers. Then tax the nobles, Thomas shot back. Tax the landowners. Tax those who have plenty, not those who have nothing. The room erupted. Several council members spoke at once, their voices overlapping in anger and disbelief. Outrageous. He dares. This is madness. Camilla raised her hand, and the room fell silent. She looked at Thomas with an expression he could not read. You propose we raise taxes on the nobility? I propose fairness, Thomas said. The nobles live in estates with full cellars and warm fires. The common folk live in cottages with dirt floors and empty stomachs. Who can afford to give more? Lady Margrave laughed, but it was a cold sound. The nobility already contributes. They fund roads, bridges, public works. They employ hundreds of workers. If we tax them further, they will simply pass the cost down to their tenants. Then regulate it, Thomas said. Make it illegal to raise rents or reduce wages in response to the tax. Protect the people. And how would we enforce such a law? Ashford demanded. Do you propose we station guards in every manor and village to monitor transactions? If necessary, Thomas said. The room went silent. Even Camilla looked surprised. You cannot be serious, Ashford said slowly. You would have us interfere in private business? Control the affairs of landowners. That is tyranny, no, Thomas said quietly. Tyranny is letting people starve while the rich grow richer. Camilla leaned back in her chair, her eyes never leaving Thomas. You are bold. I will give you that. But boldness without wisdom is recklessness. What you propose would upend the entire structure of our economy. It would anger the nobles, destabilize trade, possibly incite rebellion. Your Majesty, Thomas said, his voice breaking slightly, there is already rebellion in their hearts. You just do not see it yet. The words hung in the air like a warning. Camilla's expression darkened. Careful, guardsmen. You walk a dangerous line. Thomas bowed his head. I speak only what I know to be true. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, Camilla turned to the council. I want proposals. Real proposals. Not this decree. Find me a solution that funds the kingdom without destroying the people. You have 3 days. The council members exchanged uneasy glances, but no one dared argue. Camilla stood, and the council rose with her. This meeting is adjourned. Thomas walked the palace corridors in a daze. He could not believe what had just happened. He had spoken to the Queen. He had challenged the council. And somehow, he was still alive. But he was not safe. He could feel it in the way the other guards looked at him, some with admiration, others with fear. He had broken the unspoken rules. He had made himself a target. That night, as Thomas lay in his bunk in the guards' quarters, sleep would not come. His mind replayed the council meeting over and over. Had he said too much? Not enough? Would Camilla truly consider changing the decree? or had he only delayed the inevitable? A shadow fell across his bed. Thomas sat up quickly, his hand moving instinctively to the dagger under his pillow. "Easy," said a familiar voice. It was Captain Graves. He held a candle, the flame casting deep lines across his weathered face. "Walk with me." Thomas dressed quickly and followed the captain out into the cold night air. They walked in silence through the palace gardens, their breath misting in the chill. The moon was full, bathing everything in silver light. "You have courage," Graves said finally. "More than most men twice your age. But courage without caution gets men killed." "I know," Thomas said quietly. "But I could not stay silent." "I understand," Graves replied. "I was young once. I thought I could change the world with passion and honesty." He paused, looking up at the stars. "But the world is more complicated than we want it to be." Thomas waited. He sensed the captain had more to say. "There are forces at work here you do not see," Graves continued. "Lord Ashford and his allies do not want the tax reduced. They have ... investments, interests. If the tax is lowered, they lose money. And men like that do not lose money quietly." Thomas felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. "Are you saying they will try to stop the Queen?" "I am saying they will try to stop you," Graves said. "You are the voice of dissent now. If you disappear, if you are discredited, or worse, ... the Queen has no reason to continue this path. She can blame it on one foolish guard and move on." Thomas swallowed hard. "What should I do?" Graves looked at him, and for a moment Thomas saw something like sadness in the old captain's eyes. "Be careful. Trust no one. And if you get a chance to leave the palace, take it. Leave." Thomas said. "But the Queen asked me to." "The Queen asked you to speak," Graves interrupted. "You spoke. Your part is done. What happens next is politics, and politics is a game you are not equipped to play." "I cannot just abandon you, can," Graves said firmly. "You can live to fight another day, or you can stay and become a martyr. The choice is yours." Before Thomas could respond, they heard footsteps. Both men turned to see a figure approaching through the garden. As it drew closer, Thomas recognized the elegant silhouette. It was Camilla Graves, bowed immediately. "Your Majesty." "Forgive us. We were just leaving," Camilla finished. She looked at Graves with a small, knowing smile. "Give us a moment, Captain." Graves hesitated, then bowed again and walked away, leaving Thomas alone with the Queen. Camilla stood a few paces from him, her cloak wrapped tight against the cold. Without her crown, without the trappings of the throne room, she looked different. Smaller, more human. "You cannot sleep either," she said. It was not a question. "No, Your Majesty," Thomas admitted. She walked to a stone bench and sat, gesturing for him to join her. He did, though every instinct told him this was improper. "I have been queen for 6 years," Camilla said, staring at the garden. 6 years of impossible choices. Every day I must decide who eats and who starves, who lives and who dies. And no matter what I choose, someone suffers." Thomas said nothing. He sensed she was not looking for a response. "When I signed that decree," she continued, "I told myself it was necessary. The council showed me the numbers, the projections, the threats we face if the treasury fails. It all made sense on paper." She paused. "But I did not think about the baker's son, or the little girl with no bread for supper. I did not let myself think about them." "Why not?" Thomas asked gently. "Because if I did, I would never make any decision at all," she said. "I would be paralyzed by the weight of it. So I look at numbers instead of faces. I listen to advisors instead of guards. I forget that behind every statistic there is a life." She turned to look at him, and Thomas saw tears in her eyes. "You reminded me," she said. "You made me remember, and I hate you for it." Thomas felt his chest tighten. "Your Majesty, but I also thank you," she said. "Because a queen who forgets her people is no queen at all. She is just a tyrant with a crown." She stood, wiping her eyes quickly. "The council will present their proposals in 3 days. I do not know if they will be better than the original decree, but I promise you the Sai will not sign anything without thinking of that little girl. Without thinking of your father, without remembering that I served them, not the other way around." Thomas stood as well, his heart pounding. "That is all I ask, Your Majesty," Camilla nodded. "Go home, Thomas. See your family. Take a few days. When this is over, we will see if there is still a place for you here." It was a dismissal, but a kind one. Thomas bowed deeply. "Thank you, Your Majesty." As he turned to leave, her voice stopped him. "Thomas?" He looked back. "Be careful," she said. "You have made enemies tonight. Powerful ones." It was the second warning he had received. And as Thomas walked back to his quarters, he wondered if 2 warnings were already too few. Thomas returned to his village the next morning. The journey took half a day on horseback, and by the time he arrived, the sun was beginning to set. The village looked even worse than he remembered. Smoke rose from only a handful of chimneys. The market square was nearly empty. Faces peered out from windows, pale and wary. His father's bakery stood at the end of the main street, its windows dark. Thomas dismounted and tied his horse, his heart heavy. He pushed open the door. Inside, his father sat at the old wooden table, staring at a stack of bills and ledgers. He looked up as Thomas entered, and his weathered face broke into a tired smile. "Thomas," he said, standing. "What are you doing here? I thought you were at the palace." "I have a few days," Thomas said. He embraced his father, feeling how thin the old man had become. "Where is Sarah?" "Upstairs. Sleeping. She has not been well." His father's voice cracked slightly. "The cold, you know. And she does not eat enough." Thomas felt anger rise in his chest. His 10-year-old sister, wasting away because there was not enough food? Because the crown demanded more and more while giving less and less? It might get better," Thomas said. "I spoke to the Queen. About the taxes." His father's eyes widened. "You what?" Thomas told him everything. The throne room. The council meeting. Camilla's tears in the garden. As he spoke, his father's expression shifted from shock to fear to something like hope. "You challenged the Queen herself?" His father whispered when Thomas finished. "My son, you are either a hero or a dead man." "Maybe both," Thomas said with a weak smile. His father shook his head slowly. "You should not have come back here. If the council wants to silence you, this is the first place they will look." "I know," Thomas said. "But I needed to see you. To make sure you were all right." "We are surviving," his father said. But his eyes said otherwise. That night, Thomas sat with Sarah by the small fireplace. She was so small, so fragile. Her cheeks were hollow, her eyes too large for her face. But when she saw Thomas, she smiled. A real, genuine smile that made his heart ache. "Did you bring bread from the palace?" she asked hopefully. Thomas reached into his pack and pulled out a loaf he had saved from the guard's rations. It was not much, but her eyes lit up as if he had given her gold. She ate slowly, savoring every bite. Thomas watched her and made a silent vow. No matter what happened, he would not let her starve. He would not let any of them starve. Later, after Sarah had gone to bed, Thomas and his father sat by the dying fire. "If the tax is not reduced," his father said quietly, "I will have to close the bakery. I cannot afford the flour, cannot afford the firewood. And if I close," he trailed off, but Thomas understood. "If the bakery closed, they would have no income at all. They would have nothing." "It will not come to that," Thomas said, though he was not sure he believed it. "You cannot know that," his father replied. "The world does not change because one man speaks up. The powerful do what they want. They always have," maybe Thomas said. "But maybe this time is different." The Queen. She listened. She cared. I saw it in her eyes. His father looked at him with a mixture of pride and sorrow. "You are braver than I ever was. But bravery does not put food on the table. And it does not protect you from men with knives in the dark." The words sent a chill through Thomas. "Do you think they will come for me?" "I think powerful men do not like to be challenged," his father said. and I think you have challenged some very powerful men." They sat in silence for a while. "Listening to the wind howl outside, if something happens to me," Thomas said finally, "promise me you will take care of Sarah. Do whatever you must. Sell the bakery if you have to. Just keep her safe." His father gripped his shoulder. "Nothing will happen to you. You hear me? You will go back to the palace. Keep your head down and let the nobles play their games. You have done enough." But Thomas knew it was not that simple. He had set something in motion, and there was no stopping it now. The next morning, Thomas woke to the sound of hoofbeats. He looked out the window and saw 3 riders approaching the village, their cloaks bearing the royal crest. His stomach tightened. They were coming for him. His father appeared at his side, his face pale. "You need to go now, out the back." "No," Thomas said. "If I run, they will know I am guilty of something. I have done nothing wrong. Since when does that matter?" His father hissed. But Thomas was already moving toward the door. He stepped outside just as the riders pulled up in front of the bakery. They dismounted, and Thomas recognized the lead rider. It was Lord Ashford's personal guard, a man named Brennan, known for his cruelty. "Thomas, son of Garrett the baker," Brennan said, his hand resting on his sword. "Yes," Thomas replied, keeping his voice steady. "You are to return to the palace immediately. The Queen has summoned you." Relief flooded through Thomas. It was Camilla, not the council. He was not being arrested. At least not yet. "I will gather my things," Thomas said. Brennan smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "No need. We leave now." Thomas mounted his horse. He glanced back at the bakery. His father stood in the doorway, Sarah peeking out from behind him. The look on his father's face said everything. This might be the last time they saw each other alive. The ride back to the palace was tense. Brennan and his men said nothing, but Thomas could feel their hostility. They did not take the main road. Instead, they guided him through the forest. Along narrow paths where the trees grew thick and the shadows were deep, Thomas's hand drifted to his sword. "This is not the way to the palace." "It is a shortcut," Brennan said without looking back. "Through the forest?" Thomas pressed. "That makes no sense." Brennan pulled his horse to a stop. The other 2 riders moved to flank Thomas, cutting off any escape. Brennan turned, and his smile was gone, replaced by cold calculation. "You talk too much," Brennan said. "That is your problem. You could not just do your job. You had to play the hero." Thomas's heart began to race. "The Queen summoned me." "No," Brennan said. "The Queen did not. Lord Ashford did, and he does not want you reaching the palace." Thomas drew his sword, but he was too slow. One of the riders grabbed his arm while the other struck him hard across the back of the head. Pain exploded through his skull, and the world tilted. He fell from his horse, hitting the ground hard. Through blurred vision, he saw Brennan dismount and walk toward him. "You should have stayed silent, baker's son, but you had to make trouble. And trouble has consequences." Brennan drew his dagger. Thomas tried to move, but his body would not respond. His vision darkened at the edges. He thought of Sarah, his father, the Queen's promise. It was all slipping away. Then, suddenly, there was a shout. The sound of steel clashing. Thomas forced his eyes open and saw figures moving through the trees. Royal guards, real ones. Leading them was Captain Graves, his sword already drawn. "Step away from him," Graves commanded. Brennan hesitated, then backed up, sheathing his dagger. "Captain, I know exactly what you were doing," Graves said coldly, "and you will answer for it." He gestured to his men. "Take them." Brennan and his riders were disarmed and bound. Graves knelt beside Thomas, helping him sit up. "Are you hurt?" "I will live," Thomas said, though his head throbbed. "Good," Graves said, "because the Queen wants to see you. The real Queen this time." An hour later, Thomas stood once again in the throne room. His head was bandaged, his uniform dirty, but he was alive. Camilla sat on her throne, her expression carved from stone. Beside her stood Lady Margrave and several other council members. Lord Ashford was notably absent. "Guardsman Thomas," Camilla said, her voice echoing through the hall. "You were attacked on the road. Do you know why?" "Yes, Your Majesty," Thomas said. "Lord Ashford wanted me silenced." Murmurs spread through the room. Camilla raised a hand for silence. "Lord Ashford has been arrested," she said, "as have the men who attacked you. They will face trial for conspiracy and attempted murder." Thomas felt a wave of relief, followed quickly by disbelief. "Your Majesty, how did you know?" "Captain Graves informed me of a plot," Camilla said. "He suspected Ashford would move against you, so he had you followed. It seems his instincts were correct." Thomas looked at Graves, who stood near the door. The captain gave him a small nod. Camilla stood. "This incident has clarified things for me. The council presented their new proposals yesterday. Most were simply variations of the original decree. But there was one submitted by Lady Margrave that has merit." Lady Margrave stepped forward. "We propose a scaled tax," she said. "The wealthy pay more. The poor pay less. Those who have nothing pay nothing at all. It is not perfect, but it distributes the burden more fairly." Thomas felt hope surge in his chest. "Will it be enough? For the treasury?" "It will be enough," Margrave said. "Barely. But it will not destroy the people." Camilla looked at Thomas. "What do you think, guardsman? You speak for the common folk. Will this plan work?" Thomas thought carefully. It was not everything he had hoped for, but it was more than he had dared to dream. "It is a start, Your Majesty. A real start." Camilla smiled a small, genuine smile. "Then it is decided. The new tax decree will take effect immediately. And as for you, Thomas," she paused, "you will be promoted to the Queen's Honor Guard. You will serve directly under Captain Graves. And you will continue to speak truth to power, even when it is uncomfortable. Especially when it is uncomfortable." Thomas could hardly breathe. "Your Majesty, I do not know what to say." "Say you will serve with the same courage you showed in this room 3 days ago," Camilla said. "That is all I ask." Thomas bowed deeply. "I will, Your Majesty. I swear it." As he left the throne room, Thomas felt lighter than he had in years. He had spoken up. He had risked everything. And somehow, impossibly, it had worked. Not perfectly. Not completely. But enough. That night, Thomas rode back to the village. His father wept when Thomas told him about the new taxes. Sarah hugged him so tight he could barely breathe. And for the first time in a long time, they sat around the table with full bellies and hope in their hearts. The kingdom was not fixed. There would be more struggles, more battles, more impossible choices. But something had shifted. The people had a voice now, and that voice had been heard. Thomas looked out the window at the stars and thought of the Queen. Sitting alone in her palace, carrying the weight of a kingdom on her shoulders, he hoped she knew that she did not carry it alone. Not anymore, because sometimes all it takes is one person to stand up and speak the truth. One voice to remind the powerful that mercy is not weakness, that a kingdom is not built on gold and steel, but on the lives and hopes of its people, and sometimes that one voice is enough to change everything.